The year is 1066. The salt wind of the English Channel bites the skin, and the smell of churned earth hangs over the battlefield near Hastings. On one side stand the weary Saxons, led by King Harold Godwinson. On the other side, the Normans under William, Duke of Normandy, eager to claim the English crown. In our reality, this was the moment when England's fate turned toward France. Its aristocracy replaced, its language forever changed. William becomes king. But in this version of history, the wind blows in another direction. The Saxon shield wall holds firm against every Norman charge. Archers find no gaps in the wall, and the famed Norman cavalry, slowed by muddy ground and stubborn defense, begins to lose heart. As the sun dips, a final desperate charge fails. William falls, and his army collapses into retreat. Harold remains king of an unconquered realm. This victory shapes the soul of England for centuries. Without Norman rulers imposing feudal laws and French tongue, the Saxon system of governance, with its witans or councils, endures and evolves. Kings rule in partnership with the nobility and influential freemen, creating a culture of negotiated authority rather than absolute monarchy. The legal code retains its Germanic roots, and the language develops into a robust descendant of Old English, richer in native words and resistant to outside influence. The nobility remains closely tied to the land and its people, rather than becoming a class of continental lords who treat England as a conquered estate. Culturally, the kingdom stays linked to the North Sea world, maintaining deep bonds with Denmark, Norway, and the Low Countries, forming a northern alliance of trade and kinship. Across the Irish Sea, the ripples of Hastings reach another shore. In our own history, Norman invasion was the first step towards centuries of English dominance over Ireland. In this alternate reality, that invasion never comes. Ireland remains a mosaic of clans and small kingdoms, but over the centuries a unifying council of chieftains emerges. This confederation strengthens coastal towns and fosters a seafaring tradition that rivals the Hanseatic League of Northern Europe. By the 15th century, Irish fleets, sometimes sailing alongside Saxon merchant convoys, venture far into the Atlantic. They establish trading links with the Basque ports, the west coast of Africa, and even exploratory voyages into unknown waters to the west. The Age of Discovery takes a different form. Without a unified British Empire to pour resources into vast overseas ventures, colonization unfolds as a competitive, decentralized affair. The Spanish and Portuguese still sail south and west, but they face determined rivals in Irish and Saxon merchants, as well as North African traders. Colonies in the Caribbean and the Americas are smaller and often more focused on trade than conquest. Without Britain's later sugar and cotton empires, the transatlantic trade in enslaved African people does not grow to the same monstrous scale. It still exists, a tragic and brutal commerce in human lives, but West African states are better able to negotiate terms or resist encroachment. By the 19th century, the political order of the world is a tapestry of competing powers. The Americas are not dominated by a single language or empire. Independent republics emerge earlier in parts of South America, while in the north, Saxon colonies coexist alongside French, Spanish, and Irish settlements. The Caribbean is a checkerboard of ports claimed by different powers. The Industrial Revolution arrives in Britain, but without an empire spanning the globe, its factories rely more on European markets and North Sea partners than on far-flung colonial possessions. Ireland, enriched by centuries of maritime trade and free from English subjugation, becomes a leading shipbuilding nation, its yards turning out merchant vessels and warships for a global clientele. The Ottoman Empire remains intact and still commands trade routes through the eastern Mediterranean, preventing the unchecked expansion of European influence into the Middle East. The Ottoman Empire, facing the challenges of industrial powers, undertakes careful reforms but does not collapse in the early 20th century. The secret Sykes-Picot Agreement, which divided Ottoman lands between Britain and France, never occurs. Arabia remains within the Ottoman sphere, and oil wealth is managed through imperial institutions rather than falling to smaller monarchies. The ports of Alexandria, Basra, and Istanbul flourish as global crossroads, sustaining the flow of goods and ideas between Europe, from North Africa to Mesopotamia. These heartlands retain greater autonomy in shaping their own political and economic future. The Saxon Anglo realm stretches from Britain to parts of North America and the Pacific, tied together by trade and language. Ireland remains an independent maritime power with influence across the Atlantic. The Latin world, centered in Spain, Portugal, and parts of France, maintains strong ties with former colonies in South America and West Africa. In the East, China's fate changes dramatically. Without Britain's unchallenged naval supremacy, the Opium Wars never occur. The Qing dynasty modernizes on its own terms, blending Confucian governance with imported industrial techniques. Arsenals, shipyards, and textile mills rise in coastal cities, and railway lines push deep into the interior. By the late 19th century, China stands as an industrial and cultural powerhouse, while maintaining independence from European domination. India, too, follows a different path. The Mughal Empire gradually decentralizes into a federation of strong princely states and prosperous port cities. Maritime trade thrives, and Indian industries, textiles, shipbuilding, and metalwork, remain competitive on the world stage. Mumbai and Kolkata are cosmopolitan hubs, their docks crowded with merchants from Africa, Arabia, and Southeast Asia. By the early 20th century, India is a modernizing power in its own right, not a colony, and plays an active role in global commerce and diplomacy. Africa, never fully partitioned by European powers, is a continent of strong kingdoms, federations, and modern republics that trace their international connections back to centuries-old Atlantic trade networks. It is a world where no single empire dominates the globe. Alliances shift with the tides of trade and culture, and the map reflects a delicate balance between old traditions and modern innovations. By the early 21st century, this alternate world has settled into a balance of cultural and civilizational spheres. The English language is recognizably different, shaped more by Germanic than Romance influences. The Atlantic Ocean is a shared crossroads rather than a domain controlled by one navy. The Middle East is politically complex but not carved by foreign hands. And yet, for all its differences, this world is still one of human ambition, rivalry, and cooperation. Looking upon these maps, we are reminded that the destiny of nations can turn on a single day. In 1066, a shield wall held, a duke fell, and the great wheel of history spun in a new direction. We do not know if this alternate course would be more just or more peaceful, but it would surely be different. The Saxon victory at Hastings might have left us with a world shaped not by one empire's reach, but by many hands, many tongues, and many sails upon the wind.